Hello, thank you for joining me today, and welcome to our sanctuary here at the Episcopal Church of the Advent. Throughout Jesus' ministry, he spent most of his time teaching and preaching and performing miracles of healing. There are two particular healings that I want to talk about today. In the Gospel of Mark, we find there was a particular day in which Jesus performs two healings. One is of a young 12-year-old girl who is the daughter of a man named Jairus. And on that same day, he also healed a woman who had been bleeding for nearly 12 years. She had a disease that caused her to hemorrhage regularly. Now, as the scene opens, Jesus is approached by Jairus, and the gospel tells us that Jairus is a leader in the community. He's sort of a local celebrity. And his daughter, his 12-year-old daughter, is very ill. And so he approaches Jesus and asks Jesus, actually, he begs Jesus to come back to his house and to heal his daughter. And so Jesus agrees to do so. But as they're making their way back to Jairus' house, Jesus is approached by a woman. And we do not know her name. Her name's not recorded as Jairus' name is. And we don't know much about her other than the gospel tells us that she has this illness, this disease, that causes her to hemorrhage regularly. And she's had this disease for 12 years. Now, when this woman approaches Jesus, she doesn't approach him the same way that Jairus did. Jairus walked right up to Jesus, got down on his knees, and begged Jesus for help. This woman, however, did not do that. She actually approached Jesus in the crowd, sort of in a stealthy manner. You see, according to the social customs of her day, it was unacceptable for a woman to approach a man whom she was not related to in such a public space. Also, because she had this bleeding disease, she was considered ritually impure according to the religious laws of her day. And so there she was, a woman, trying to approach a man in public. And also, she is ritually impure, and so anybody she touches will become ritually impure. And so for the 12 years that this woman has been suffering, she has largely been ostracized from her community, cut off from her family, cut off from her friends, even cut off from her religious community. But she approaches Jesus for help, and she walks up behind him and grabs on to the hem of his clothing, the hem of his cloak. And she feels that if she can just grab onto the hem of his cloak, she will be made whole. And she is. The Bible tells us that she is ultimately healed of her disease. Jesus realizes, though, that he's been touched, and he turns to see who has touched him. And the woman, with fear and trembling, confesses that she indeed is the one who grabbed onto his cloak. And Jesus, rather than being angry, is actually full of compassion, and he refers to her in a very familial way, referring to her as daughter. And then he proceeds to Jairus' house and actually heals Jairus' daughter. In fact, he raises her from the dead. On the surface, this looks like two stories about healing, but actually these two stories have something profound to say to us about the nature of God's kingdom. You see, in this story, we have two individuals, Jairus and this unnamed woman. And both of them are in need of mercy. They're in need of help. Jairus for his daughter, the woman for her own healing. And they're very different people. Jairus is a man in a very patriarchal society. He's also a local leader. He's a religious leader. He's somewhat of a celebrity. And this unnamed woman has been ostracized. She lives on the fringes of society. But both of them approach Jesus for help, and both of them receive mercy. The local leader, as well as the unnamed woman on the fringe. And so this gospel tells us in this story, this gospel makes clear to us that all of us stand equal before God. All of us are in need of God's mercy, and God pours out his mercy on all of us, regardless of who we are, whether we're a local leader or whether we're completely unknown and living on the fringe. all of us have an equal place in God's kingdom. That's really the good news of this gospel. Thank you so much for joining me this day. And if you have found this message helpful, please feel free to share it on your Facebook or Instagram or other forms of social media so that others can see it and might find it helpful as well. Thank you so much.